Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us to our second Alumni Career Management webinar this academic year. I am Alicia Beal, and I'm the Senior Director for Development and Alumni Relations. This webinar is entitled You 2.0, Managing Your Personal Online Reputation, and it will be presented by one of our alumni, Tracy Samantha Schmidt, the class of 2006. She is currently the Director of Social Media Strategy for Crane Communications. And Tracy has taught social media strategy to thousands of people, professionals, students across the country, and we are very fortunate to have her with us today. Before I turn our presentation over to Tracy, I want to give you a little bit of housekeeping. This is an interactive presentation, so if you'd like to ask questions at any time, please use the chat feature at the top of the page. You can click on chat, and in the Send To box, please select All Panelists, and we will answer your questions as we go. There will be certain points when we can stop and take many questions if we have a lot in the queue, but we will do our very best to answer every single question. Also, we recommend that you maximize your screen. There's in the middle, a little bit to the right, there's an arrow, and that should maximize your screen so that you can get the full view of Tracy's presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Tracy Samantha Schmidt, and thank you so much for joining us. Tracy?
Yep, I guess you can. All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today and to be presenting this webinar with you all on your lunch hour or just your free hour during the day. So this presentation I've given a few times in the last year. It came from a question I often get asked when I teach, which is how do I manage my own personal brand online? How do I manage my own personal online reputation? So the presentation will run about 45 minutes, and we're going to cover the following things through today's presentation, which is an overview about how your personal search results work. Then we're going to take a case study and a closer look at author and finance expert Ellen Rogan, who's a friend of mine in Chicago and here. Then we're going to talk about social media best practices on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Then we're going to talk about designing your personal strategy. So what kind of things should you be thinking about as you're interacting online? And then I'll provide some additional resources, including a couple of websites that I find personally helpful, as well as several books for additional reading. And then we should have time for some wrap-up. But as Alicia said, we are going to take questions throughout the presentation. And yes, I can hear fine. I just asked a question from the prompt, from Allie. So yes, I can hear A-OK. All right, so question is have you Googled yourself lately? So when is the last time that you personally have Googled yourself on the internet to figure out what your search results look like? I do it probably every month or so. I also have Google Alerts set up, though, for my name, which I'll talk about in a bit. So when you Google yourself, the reason you want to Google yourself is you want to understand how is the world finding you and what information are they finding out about you. In order to do a clean search on Google, you'll need to clean out your any sort of data that you already have in the system, because Google is remembering everywhere you've gone before, so it's actually going to be changing the search results of what you're searching for based on where you've already searched. So to clean slate it, you're going to go into incognito mode in Google Chrome, which you can access in the settings function on Google Chrome. Other browsers have this as well. And then go ahead and type your name as people would search for it. In my case, I use my full name professionally. So I did a search for Tracy Samantha Schmidt, which you can see up at the top. And then below that are all of the search results for my name. So you'll see that my LinkedIn is first, and then my Twitter account, and then a website that I used to have is there as well. So the screenshots from last year, and then images of myself, and then my Facebook profile, and then our business website, cranesocial.com. So if I take a closer look here, I can see on the left-hand side of the screen, these are all the links associated with my name. You'll see that my social profiles are actually at the top of my search results. So this is pretty standard for people who are not famous but are everyday people. Their social media profile will often be at the top of their search results. On the right-hand side of the screen are images of me that show up in Google Images. So these are different images from social media as well as images posted from websites. And then on the bottom right are my YouTube search results under video. And you'll see that the second search result is actually a video I did with Dominican that has been posted to YouTube. So how do you keep track of your search results? The best way to do this is to sign up for a Google alert. So you can go to google.com/alerts and set up a Google alert for your name. You can have it sent every day. You can have it sent every time there's a mention of your name. You can have it sent every week. I have mine sent every day, and it's just a quick check on, where is my name being mentioned online, blogs or news articles or things like that as well. You can also, importantly, sign up for different variations of your name. So some people might call you, by your nickname. Other people might call you by your professional name or your maiden name or your married name. So you could actually set up several different Google alerts for different interpretations of your name. So what if you find something bad about yourself? So what if you find out, there's a bad photo of you or a blog post in which you quoted or something like that? What can you do to get rid of that content? The first thing you can do is ask the person who posted that content to remove it from their website or their social profile. If they don't do that, you can contact the site's webmaster to remove the content, or finally, you can file a formal request through Google to remove the page from its search result. These are listed in order from easiest to do to hardest to do. Ideally, the person will remove it. You can contact the owner of the site or the webmaster of the site to remove it, or you can file that claim through Google. So the biggest takeaway from all of this is that social media is going to be the fastest and cheapest way to improve your personal reputation online. So when we think about social media, what we're talking about is any of the social networks from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, Yelp, but there are many more. There's actually hundreds of social networks that now exist. But these are the top ones, and today we'll be focusing on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's important to have a strategy when working on your online reputation. Ultimately, you want to have a home on the web where you can send people for more information about yourself. This could be about giving your contact information, what you're interested in doing professionally with other people, things like that. So typically, most people, their home on the web is going to be their LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is where we put our professional resumes up online and all of the information we want to share with the professional world. Some people have their own personal websites. When we take a look at Ellen Rogan in a minute, we're going to take a look at how she made her home on the web, her own website, ellenrogan.com. Secondly, it's important to create and share content regularly. So this means creating content such as sharing a link to an interesting article that you found on LinkedIn. It might be sharing a photo on Instagram or on Twitter. It might be sharing a status update on Facebook if you're interacting with a lot of people on Facebook. Because the more content that you share regularly, the more that content is going to go out into the internet, and Google is going to see that content attached to your name, so that every time someone does a search for your name, the fresh content is going to appear at the top. So this is really important to make sure that your profile is fresh. There's a lot of beeping going on. Just make sure your content is fresh at the top so that when people search for you, they're finding that fresh stuff. Building meaningful relationships online. So this is the third most important thing that you can be doing, which is really interacting with people that you meet online. So on LinkedIn, it might be something like sharing an endorsement with somebody else or a recommendation with somebody else. It might be on Twitter, retweeting something that somebody else is tweeting or favoriting something that they're doing. It could also be liking a photo that somebody else has posted on Facebook. So it's building those meaningful relationships online so that ultimately those other people are also going to support what you're doing online and then off as well. And then finally, which we talked about, is monitoring your personal search results. So signing up for that Google alert is going to notify you immediately if there is something that you need to take action about. I want to pause and see if there's any questions, Alicia or Allie, that you guys have right now.
We don't have any questions yet, so,
okay.
But I do encourage everyone to please submit your questions using the chat feature, and just in the send to box, the drop-down box, please put all panelists, and we'll be able to answer those. Thanks so much.
Sure, great, thank you. So next up, I want to show a case study of Ellen Rogan. I realize there is a typo underneath her name. It says great, great. It's actually called Create Great. Ellen kind of has a double life. She's the director of Metropolitan Capital Bank here in Chicago, and she's both a CPA and a CFA. But she's also a speaker and an author, and her new book is coming out next year. But what we're going to take a look at is how Ellen has done a phenomenal job of not only managing her online reputation, but really managing it for a specific action, which is to get people to hire her as both a speaker and to buy her book. So I did a search of Ellen Rogan's name in an incognito search on Google, and these are the search results I got for Ellen's name. You'll see up at the top that this is her actual website, ellenrogan.com, and then right below that is the address of her office. So this is actually a Google place. I can see that it's a Google place or a specific listing on Google because it has that little kind of flag mark right next to the address. And over on the right-hand side of the screen is the actual map for that. You can list your business on Google Places and attach it to your name. You'll just go to google.com/places to register your business for free. Next up is her LinkedIn profile, and then below that is her speaker website, and then below that, I believe, is her personal financial business website as well. And then her images are below that, and then her Twitter account is below that as well. These are Ellen's images. So when I Google Ellen's name, these are all the different images that came up for her name. So you'll see that all of these are professional images or images of her speaking as well. Ellen also has her own YouTube channel, so she's frequently uploading her own videos to her channel, and other people are also posting videos of Ellen and then making sure to list her name in the headline of that video. On a YouTube video, the headline is the most important part of your video. So make certain to include your full name in your headline and also include your name in the description of that video. The description is this content right to the right of the videos that we're seeing underneath the link. So there's about, maybe 200 words that you can fit into that space. Be sure to include your name there as well. This is Ellen's actual website for her speaking and writing business. So it's a really well-designed site. There's several calls to action, including an email submission form in the upper right-hand corner. Right above that, you'll see the links to her social profiles. It's very important if you have a professional or personal website that it's easy to find your social profiles, and it's also important to capture that email right on your website so that you can stay in communication with people who are interested in doing business with you. This is an inside look at her website, so this is one of the tabs about Ellen Rogan. It's very clean, lots of white space. This is actually a video on the upper right-hand corner, the photo of Ellen. If you click on that, you would see a video of her welcoming you to her website. This is more about the programs that she had upcoming. So she does these different workshops and sessions for conferences. So she's got it all detailed right here. She's also integrated her Twitter feed right on the right-hand side. So whenever she tweets, it's going to populate this feed right here. This is a plugin for a website. So if you're working with a web developer or even building your own on a site like WordPress, you can easily integrate your Twitter right into your website as well. This is Ellen's blog. So she's posting on her blog probably only once every month or 2 months, which is fine. You don't need to blog every week if you don't have content every week or if you're super busy running your businesses. But fresh blog contents can certainly be used to announce upcoming books that you might be writing or workshops you might be doing or appearances you might be making as well. This is Ellen's Twitter profile. So we can see on the left-hand side of the screen her photo, great headshot, and then her bio right below it, abundance activist, author of Picture Your Prosperity, speaker and entrepreneur, coach to financial advisors, get free prosperity tips at, and then a shortened link. And then below that, where she's located, Northfield, as well as a link to her website. She did a really great job here of both listing her personal website as well as listing a link to get her email, which is a great call to action right within Twitter. On the right-hand side of the screen, in the middle of the screen rather, are all of her most recent tweets. And you'll see right at the top that she was on WGN Radio yesterday or 2 days ago talking with Bob Strott and Marianne Marciano about financial advice. So it was a really great way of promoting her own work there. This is her own personal Facebook profile. Ellen has a profile on Facebook, not a page, which we'll talk about in a bit. So a profile is what a human being can have on Facebook. So you friend other Facebook users on the social network. A page is what a brand or a public figure could have. So a page, you'll know if it's a page if somebody can like your page, and you'll know if it's a profile if they can friend you individually. In this case, Ellen uses her profile for that. Finally, this is Ellen's LinkedIn profile. So you'll see up at the top, she has both her married name and her maiden name, as well as the fact that she's both a CPA and a CFP, and then her headline right below that. The headline on LinkedIn is also the most important part of your profile. So wealth and prosperity expert, abundance activist, woman in money authority, author, and speaker. So she's using key phrases in her headline that people might be searching for on LinkedIn. So if somebody's looking for an author who speaks about women or about money authority, Ellen's profile will come up right away. So she really kind of nailed her headline in that she's sharing all the different things that she does and the skill sets that she could provide to someone else. Below that is her summary, and then below that is her resume in reverse chronological order. So if we keep going down, we'll see this Chief Inspiration Officer is about her writing and speaking business. Director, Metropolitan Capital Bank is about her other position. And then below that is a book that she worked on as well. Below that are the skills or endorsements that Ellen has received. So this is a module that LinkedIn released within the last year and a half or so. You've probably gotten emails almost every day. Do you endorse so-and-so for so-and-so? A lot of people don't like this function because there's really no rhyme or reason to how it works, and a lot of people will try to just endorse you with the hopes that you'll endorse them back. I typically will endorse people if it pops up in my feed, but otherwise I typically ignore it. If you really hate this module, you can remove it from your profile by going to Edit Settings on LinkedIn, edit your profile, and then click Remove that module. Finally, Ellen shows her educational background as well as additional interest, in this case, yoga and meditation, organizations she's affiliated with, honors that she's received, and then these are recommendations that people have written about Ellen. So Ellen has several recommendations. She's received 24 recommendations. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, and given 29. The best way to get a recommendation on LinkedIn is to give one. You can certainly reach out to people offline and say, hey, I would really appreciate if you could write a recommendation for my profile. It's a good idea to have at least 3 recommendations on your LinkedIn profile as they validate everything else that you said about yourself on LinkedIn. Finally, these are groups that Ellen is on. And these groups, there are actually millions of groups on LinkedIn, all sorts of groups, including Dominican has several, which we'll talk about in a minute. Groups are a great place to meet like-minded people, to share articles with them, and potentially network with them and meet them offline. And then finally, you can see that she's also following different businesses online. So companies and both universities can also have pages on LinkedIn as well, which you can follow as well. I'll talk about those in a minute. Alicia, what questions do we have? I saw a few come through as I was talking.
Well, several people are interested in getting a copy of the presentation. And I will say that we will be sending an email out early next week that will have a link to a video of this presentation. So it'll be, you'll be able to hear exactly what you're hearing today then. And I don't know how you feel. We can talk about whether or not we can also put a link to the actual PowerPoint, but you definitely will get a video of the presentation in your inbox, a link to it in your inbox that you can share with colleagues. The other question we received was someone was interested in getting just a brief overview of how to possibly remove anything you don't want to come up when people Google your name. Can you address that?
That's a hard question. The challenge, so that's what we call online reputation management or personal online reputation management. So if there might have been a negative news article about you, or let's say worst case scenario, you've been arrested for something and that comes up, it's very hard to remove that because news articles specifically are often one of the first things that people search for. So there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing is to just start, well, first, see if you can get it removed. If you can't get it removed, you're going to need to spend a lot of energy creating content to essentially bury whatever it is you're trying to hide or get removed. So that's where social media comes into play, being active on lots of social networks. Having a blog will also help a lot with that as well. Because the blog will be at the top of your search ultimately, and that's going to continue to suppress that content as well. Getting positive press for either yourself or your business will help a lot as well. Finally, you may need to hire a SEO or search engine optimization expert that can do a lot of kind of link building behind the scenes. There's a website called reputation.com. This is what they specialize in. A lot of executives will often use this to suppress content that they don't want being found as well. But typically it will take about...
We also had...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Just really fast. It will take about at least 90 days to suppress that content because of the way Google refreshes its feed. So it's going to take time to bury that content. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody added a slightly more specific question about how to get a photo of yourself removed from the web. Is that any different than what you've just described?
It's the same process. So again, asking the person to remove it or talking to the webmaster. You could put a request into the social network as well. So Facebook, Twitter, I'll have these as well. Or asking Google to remove it from its search engine as well.
And one more before we move on. Someone is asking, what's the separation between private and professional lives? Often I see both for someone. When I should only see the professional for someone I do not know. I don't want to know too much about their personal life.
Yeah, that's probably the question I get asked. Number 2, right after how do I manage my Google results, is how do I separate personal from professional? That's actually a great transition into our next section, social media best practices. So I will answer your question hopefully through the following section, and if it doesn't quite make sense, we can talk more about it too. But ultimately, unfortunately, it's pretty impossible to hide your personal life on social media right now. That being, a lot of our worlds have merged. A lot of people on Facebook are now friends with their colleagues or even their bosses or their clients. And so you're starting to see this blurring of the online personal and professional lives. You can certainly lock down your Facebook profile, for example, and only friend, your closest friends and your closest relatives. I know that a lot of teachers, especially teachers in elementary and high school, will actually have 2 Facebook profiles. So they'll have like a fake Facebook profile that they think their students are all going to. So they'll use their full name for that one. And then the student's like, oh, look, I found, Ms. Schmidt's, Facebook profile, ha. And then the teacher will actually have a separate one in which they use a different name. It might be like their first name and their middle name, or just a completely different name. And that way they're able to be themselves on Facebook. But you should always be aware that your profile, people can discover it, even if you don't want them to find it. It is a social network. And they can certainly take screenshots of things, even if you've deleted them. So with students, I tell them on Snapchat, for example, Snapchat is a social network where the content disappears within like 30 seconds. People can still take screenshots of content on Snapchat. So always, anything you post online, realize that it could potentially be found as well. So here are some best practices for using social media in your professional life, and then I'll talk more about balancing with your personal life as well. Upper left-hand corner, highlighting your background. So talking about your background, what you've done, what you look to do online. Next up, which we've talked about, is improving your personal SEO. So social media is a great way to improve your personal search engine results. Number 3 is to share your expertise. If you've written blog posts or videos or articles, things like that, social media is a great way to share that content. Talk about what you're working on. So talk about if you're, attending a workshop or giving a speech or going to a conference, finding new business leads, talking with your peers. Groups on LinkedIn and Facebook are great ways to connect with people in your industry. Promoting people in your network, so sharing updates about your friends and your colleagues and their accomplishments. And finally, keeping up with industry news. So these are all the different ways in which social media can help you in your professional life. But now what I want to do is focus specifically on the 3 social networks, what the main components are of them, and how you can use each of them to your advantage. So on LinkedIn, there's 4 main components. One is the profile in the upper left-hand corner. All users on LinkedIn have a profile. Essentially, it's where you can post your resume, recommendations, links to presentations, and more. On the right is a company page. So both companies and universities now have pages on LinkedIn. This is controlled by the brand, where they can share information on their employees, promotions internally, business growth, services offered, and more. The bottom left is a group. On LinkedIn, you can have both a private and a public group, which allow users to have discussions with like-minded professionals. Alicia, I see that you guys have several Dominican groups or subgroups. So do you want to talk at all about the different groups available on LinkedIn?
Sure. So we have a general group that, pardon?
No, go ahead. I'm pulling you in.
That's okay. So we have a general group on LinkedIn, and everyone is invited to join that. And through that, you can see who's in that group, I believe, if you're a member. And you can post, and your posts will go out. If somebody has a feed or like a digest set up, they'll get an email with discussions started. So you could ask a general question to all Dominican alumni who have chosen to join this group. This is, so it's all Dominican University alumni. There are faculty in this and staff in this. The subgroups, and pardon me, off the top of my head, I don't remember them all, but there's one for our library sciences graduate professionals, and that actually is both graduates of our library sciences, library information sciences school, but also other librarians who maybe didn't get that degree from us. And there's other categories of professional categories. So you can connect with alumni who are in a specific industry. So those are smaller, more narrow and targeted groups. I think there's one for fashion merchandising and a few other areas, a business one. And so that helps you target who you are talking to, as opposed to the broad group, which has, right now the number is escaping me because it just keeps going up, but several thousand people. You can also, just as another way to kind of connect, you can see using the company page, the university page, you can actually click on a certain section and you can search all of our alumni by who have LinkedIn profiles, by where they live, what industry they're in, or what company they are in. So you can see if you live in a certain town or a certain city, you might be able to see how many other alumni have LinkedIn profiles, say they live in New York City. And that might be a way, because then you can see their profiles. You might want to send them a message or try and get an introduction if somebody you're connected to is connected to them. So that's a little bit about the groups and our page.
Great, thank you so much. The last aspect of LinkedIn is the home page. This is when you log into LinkedIn. You can see the network, all of the people in your network, what their latest updates are, if they've been promoted or switched positions. You'll also see updates from any companies that you're following and also updates from any groups that you're participating in. Some best practices for LinkedIn for professionals. So again, your headline is the most important part of your LinkedIn profile. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a screenshot of my LinkedIn profile headline. So it says Director of Social Media Strategy and Consulting at Crane Communications, and then I have a break, and then the phrase is Social Media Strategist, Speaker, and Writer. So if someone was searching for a social media strategist, social media speaker, or writer, they would find my profile right here through the LinkedIn search engine. Below that, the second important thing to do is to share updates regularly on LinkedIn. So something as simple as posting a link to an article you found or a video that you find interesting can really boost your visibility on LinkedIn. You could do this every day or every week. The summary is the next part of LinkedIn to also pay attention to. So your summary is essentially your bio. It's about 300 to 400 words, and typically people will, write a bio in the first or the third person, depending on their preference. I've actually rewritten mine in the first person recently. I just found it to be more personable than having the third person, as you'll see here. On your LinkedIn profile, it's important to include key phrases. So key phrases, again, are phrases that people might be typing into their search engines trying to find someone that fits that description. So it could be something like educator or librarian or lawyer, but then it gets more specific like that. So it might be a lawyer specializing in real estate law or finance law, things like that. Up in the upper right-hand corner are the skills and expertise section. This is what I already talked about. If you don't like that module, you can remove it by editing your profile and then removing that module from there. Next up is a recommendation. Again, as I said with Alan's profile, it's important to have at least 3 recommendations from people who are validating what you've accomplished, that you say you've accomplished through LinkedIn. Finally, SlideShare are a great tool to embed within LinkedIn. Let's say you've created an outstanding presentation on PowerPoint or something else, and you really want to show it off as part of your portfolio. You can upload it to the website slideshare.com and then embed that SlideShare link right into your LinkedIn profile. That way, people who are potentially doing business with you can click through to see the work that you've already done. next up, we're going to talk about Twitter. Alicia, I'm going to go back, though. Were there any questions specifically about LinkedIn that have come through?
You know, one of the, Dora is asking about privacy settings for open versus closed groups on LinkedIn. And I wanted to point out that our group is a closed group. And she was, because we approve people request to join, and we verify that they have a connection, that they are either a student, a current student, an alumna or alumnus of the university, a staff, a faculty member. But her question actually goes more towards search engine results, that if you're posting in an open group, they'll come up in search engines, but if you're posting in a private group, a closed group like ours, they won't. Is that the case? Is that a consideration? Can you address that?
So LinkedIn, so if you're in a LinkedIn private group, can it be captured by a search engine? I don't believe so, but you should still be, you know, aware that somebody could easily take a screenshot of something that's happening within a LinkedIn group. So certainly be careful, whatever you're posting in there, that it may get out of the group anyway.
Right, but it's not going to help, but it's also not going to add to your reputation if you're posting professional things also.
Right,
in the closed group.
Right. Typically when you're in a group, it's not actually going to improve your search results at all. What LinkedIn, all the social networks are looking at are what are the most recent updates you've posted to the social network. So really, if you're focused on that, I would just post updates every day on whatever social networks you happen to be on. Regarding privacy in LinkedIn, there's one thing I should add, which is when people are beginning to search for a job, there's a tendency to, you know, make lots of changes to your LinkedIn profile and, you know, connect with 200 people overnight, which is a huge red flag to your current employer and colleagues. So my recommendation is first, you can turn off your activity broadcast on LinkedIn. This means that nobody's going to be able to see, you know, oh, Tracy has 5 new connections and has updated her profile. It's actually going to turn all that off. So you'll go into your account settings on LinkedIn, turn off activity broadcast, and that way you can turn it back on when you're ready to be more public about your updates on LinkedIn. The other thing too is also just, you know, make changes slowly. Maybe make one change every few days on LinkedIn so that, you know, by week 3, your profile has really been revamped. You just don't want to draw more attention to your profile if you're still at another job. So next I'm going to talk about Twitter. Oh, question?
Tracy, can I just ask one more question, just one more. In LinkedIn, Margot is asking, what if I want recruiters to find me, but I don't live in the area where I want to move and find a job? What can she do with her LinkedIn profile to help that?
Yeah, that can be a little more challenging. So I would change your headline. You know, I have a break in my headline, so I would say the first part, you know, what is it that you're currently doing? And then put that little like line break and then say open to new location or things like that. That would be the most obvious. The second is you could also in your summary say that you are open to moving to new places. The third is you could just start to personally reach out to recruiters or headhunters that you want to do business with and message them and say, hey, I'm looking to move to Milwaukee or wherever. Please consider me for these positions as well. It's a great question.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure. So next up, Twitter. So Twitter, I'm imagining most people on the call are not active on Twitter. Twitter is largely now used mostly by content creation, or largely used by brands to talk with the public to broadcast information. It's also used by journalists and celebrities and public figures to share information. Less and less we're seeing everyday people use Twitter. The exception would be entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs will often use Twitter to talk about what they're doing. Marketers will do it to demonstrate their understanding of Twitter. But if you're not on Twitter, don't sweat it. Let me just quickly explain how it works. So a tweet is a public message that's 140 characters or less, and it can include a link. A handle is your Twitter username, which is preceded by the @ sign. So my Twitter handle is @TracySamantha. Followers are the people who have opted into receiving tweets in their personal feed. So I'm following, in this case, 821 people, or no, 1,324 people. I don't even know how many people I'm following. But these are the people that I want to pay more attention to. And you're going to say, how the heck do you follow 1,300 people online? You don't. What I do is I use Twitter lists. So Twitter lists are ways to group people together and then organize them. So when I go into twitter.com, I can pull up my list for all of the journalists that I follow, or all of the professors that I follow, or all of the, media outlets that I follow. That way I can quickly use it to stay organized and updated on what's going on. Finally, a direct message, or a DM, is a private tweet sent between two Twitter users. So most famously, Anthony Weiner is the example we all think of when we talk about direct messaging. Essentially what Anthony Weiner, the former congressman, did was he sent what he thought was a direct message to a woman, but he actually sent a public message out. And as soon as he realized it, he deleted it and said his account had been hacked, but he had actually sent the direct message himself. So a rule of thumb with direct messages is always be careful for what you're sending. In a direct message, certainly don't put anything in it that you would be uncomfortable with other people seeing. So 4 best practices for professionals on Twitter. 1 is to write a strong profile. Again, this is where you're going to include your job title, your accomplishments, and link to your personal website or your LinkedIn profile. In my profile, it says Social Media Director at Crane Communications, publisher of 20 titles. Previously at University of Chicago, Chicago Now, DePaul University, and Time Magazine. Love meeting passionate people. So you'll see right there that I've actually linked to the Twitter handles of those organizations, and then there's a link below that to my LinkedIn profile. Other rules of thumb on Twitter is to follow the 1/3 rule. So a lot of people will ask about Twitter is, how do I know what to share? Like, I don't want to talk about myself all the time. So the rule is 1/3 of the time talk about yourself, 1/3 of the time talk about your followers, so retweeting your followers or liking their content on Twitter, and then 1/3 of the time talking about your mutual interests. It could be the industry that you both work in. It could be the Chicago Bears. It could be travel. Whatever it is that you're both interested in, share content about that. Watching your DMs I've talked about, and then finally, after 2 @replies, take it offline. An @reply is a tweet that's public but directed at another user. So it's a good idea not to go back and forth with another user because that tends to crowd the Twitter stream that people are reading, and they may not want to see this public conversation. So after 2 or 3 back and forths, take it offline, either switching to direct message, email, or some other means of communication. Alicia, any questions about Twitter that have come in?
No, actually, we have not had any questions, so
Okay.
I think we can move on.
All right. We'll move on to, yeah, Twitter has definitely declined in popularity in the last few years. But Facebook has only started to continue to increase, especially among adults over the age of 40. So on Facebook, there's 4 main components. A profile is what an individual user has. This is how they share content with their friends. It's important to note that a brand cannot be friends with a user. Instead, a brand can have a page. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we see Dominican University's page on Facebook. So a page is a brand or a public figure can have a page which users can like. While a page is free, a brand will need to pay for maximum exposure across Facebook. So this is really important if you're managing your own Facebook page for your business or your brand. Unfortunately, Facebook now makes it extraordinarily difficult to reach people without paying for it. Typically, what we'll see is if you post on your Facebook page a post, you're going to reach about 5% of the people who have liked your page on Facebook. So if you post today and you have, let's say, 100 people that have liked your page on Facebook, you're only going to reach 5 of those people, what we call organically. If you wanted to reach all 100 people, you're actually going to need to pay to promote your posts. It's called boosting your post. You can pay anywhere from $5 to $20 to boost your posts, make sure that it's seen by all the people who liked your page. You can also increase that to their friends as well. So Facebook is now largely a pay-to-play kind of social network for brands. The news feed, bottom left-hand corner, is the homepage that a user will see upon logging in. I see a typo there, upon logging into Facebook. The content that appears here is determined by an algorithm called EdgeRank. So every time you log into Facebook, Facebook's deciding what do you, Alicia, or you, Allie, see when you're on Facebook. And so it's determining what brands have you interacted with the most, what profiles have you clicked on the most, what have you personally shared. It's constantly changing. Facebook recently this week actually announced that you can now customize your own feed on Facebook. So you can say, yes, I want to see more posts from Dominican University, and I want to see less posts from, say, Starbucks or something like that. Finally, a group. Just like on LinkedIn, there are groups on Facebook. They can, again, be open or closed, allowing Facebook users a platform to share content and discuss ideas with each other. Some best practices for professionals on Facebook. So the question earlier was about separating your professional and personal life. On Facebook, the best thing you can do is have strong privacy settings. You can go learn more about those at facebook.com/privacy. But on Facebook, there is the option to remove your profile from search engines. So if you don't want your Facebook profile to be discovered at all, you can turn off that option within Facebook. You can also just make sure that nobody can tag you in photos without your permission, which is something that I've done. Next up on the right-hand side is unsubscribe rather than unfriend. A lot of people will say, I'm really annoyed by my Facebook friends' political beliefs or their constant updates about, what they ate for breakfast, things like that. Rather than unfriend that person, you should unsubscribe from that person. That way there aren't any hurt feelings or awkward moments if that person finds out you've unfriended them. Unsubscribing simply means they will no longer appear in your newsfeed. The bottom left-hand corner, supporting your friends. Facebook is all about your friends, your actual real friends, as well as people that you just call your friend that may not be your friend. But it's important to acknowledge their accomplishments on Facebook, and you certainly want to do that by tagging them in your posts and just giving them shout-outs regularly. This is all about being a good community member on Facebook. That way, when you go ahead to post something important, they're going to go ahead and promote you and celebrate you as well. Finally, always saying thank you. If someone has given you a shout out, it's important to say thank you right in the post where that person gave you a shout out. Alicia, any questions?
Yes, from Hollis. For professionals who do not have their own business, how important is Facebook for networking, job seeking, etc.?
Good question. I don't think it's that important if you don't have your own business. I would really focus my energy much more on LinkedIn. You can certainly have a strong profile on Facebook, a professional profile on Facebook, but I wouldn't see a need to use it for networking professionally.
Great. And that's so far all the questions we have on Facebook.
Great. So the last thing I want to focus on then is designing your personal strategy for social media and managing your personal online reputation. So this is a four-part kind of a worksheet that I like to walk people through, and we're going to get a little self-focused right now, really thinking about first asking yourself, what do I want to achieve? So do I want to launch a new business? Do I want to find a new job? Do I want to find new clients? Do I want to start speaking? What is it that I want to achieve in my career? Who do I need to connect with? So who are the kinds of people that I need to start finding? Is it a headhunter? Is it a speakers bureau? Is it a university? Is it an employer looking for someone with my skill set? Where are those people online? Most likely those people are on LinkedIn. They might also be on Twitter. They could be on other social networks. If you're in the visual arts or in the more of a creative space, they might be on Instagram or Pinterest or YouTube as well. What value can I provide to those people? So can I share interesting articles with them? Can I connect them to like-minded people? Can I answer their questions? How can I help them? And finally, what action do I want them to take? What is my call to action for myself? Do I want people to pick up the phone and, hire me to speak? Do I want them to sign up for my email? Do I want them to read my blog? Do I want them to join my LinkedIn group? What do I want them to do? Second up is creating your value proposition. So really taking a step back and going, who am I? What is it that I do? What is it that I've done? How can I help you? What do I need help with? What do you need help with also? And how to contact me? By answering these questions, you're going to be able to write your bio for your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile, and really think about how you're going to present yourself on social media. Step number 3 is at the top. Very important about how can you add value online. So what topics can I write about? Do I want to write for a blog? Do I want to guest write for somebody else's blog? What kind of content can I share? What kind of articles do I want to share with people or videos do I want to share with people? What conversations can I join? Is there a group, a Dominican, that I can join on LinkedIn? Or maybe my, industry has an association that has a LinkedIn group as well. what people can I connect online? So how can I bring people together through online, and how do I extend myself offline? How do I make myself helpful to other people online? Finally, deciding your boundaries. Will I talk about my personal life online? Will I share photos of my children or of my house? Will I talk about my political beliefs or my religious beliefs? What photos and videos will I share online or not share online? Will I discuss my personal beliefs? Will I log on during the weekends or vacation? And finally, will I share my physical location? This is very important for women. A great piece of advice a woman mentor of mine gave me was she would check in at an event. So checking in means like tagging yourself at an event as she was leaving the event. That way, the organizers of the event, knew that she had been there and they thanked her for her support, but physically she was no longer there, so nothing creepy could happen to her because she was already gone. So that was a really great piece of advice. Alicia, any questions about this worksheet?
I haven't had any about this worksheet. I did have one from one of our students, actually, about, this goes back to Googling, and he says that when he Googles, there are all the social media stuff comes up, which isn't a problem, but there are some under pictures, images from a very old MySpace page that has been deleted. But when he clicks on it, it goes to a third-party website, archive site that seems to keep old content. What are those, and how do you get those kinds of profiles? How do they get them if they were private on MySpace?
I have no idea, actually. If he can, contact the owner of the website or the webmaster to have it taken down. He can also contact Google, and Google, will look at his request, and if so, will remove that from its servers. Ultimately, how Google works is Google is essentially going through and taking kind of screenshots of all content on the internet and storing it in its servers. So anytime somebody searches for a specific piece of content, Google will go into its servers and return that search result. So what he would need to do is say, hey, Google, I don't want this content. This shouldn't be here. It should be gone. Google will say, theoretically, okay, you're right. We're going to go ahead and remove that from our servers. Okay.
Great. Thanks for that. And I haven't gotten any more questions about that wonderful kind of flow chart you had there. That was really interesting.
Sure. So then on that note, next step would be thinking about, well, what social networks do you want to participate in? So this grid is going to walk you through on the left-hand side the top social networks. And the next column is what to share in each of them. And then the ease of use, privacy options, and then how often should you post on it. So you'll see that Facebook, ease of use is moderate, not the best privacy options, and post on it maybe every few days. Twitter can be difficult to learn how to use, so take your time with Twitter if you want to get onto it. There are almost no options for privacy on Twitter other than the fact that you can make your account private, but then what that means is only people that you're allowing to see your Twitter profile can see your tweets. But again, remember that those people can take screenshots of your tweets. They can also simply retweet your tweet to their followers, making your private tweet no longer private. If you're going to be on Twitter, it's important to tweet at least every day or every couple of days. Most people on Twitter will tweet several times a day. LinkedIn, we've talked about. LinkedIn is an easy social network to use. There is some privacy options. It's your choice how often you post to it. Google Plus is a social network that launched by Google a few years ago. It's very sleepy, almost completely inactive these days. Most people in the social media space no longer pay much attention to it, but if you're focused on your search results, having a profile on Google Plus is going to be one more social network you can use to start improving your personal online reputation. Pinterest is a social network in which you can share photos and videos or pin them to pin boards by theme. It's very easy to use. You can have private boards, so that actually is wrong. You can have a private board on Pinterest, and then it's up to you how often you post to it. Pinterest is about 90% female. It's very popular for sharing recipes, decorating ideas, travel plans, things like that. Finally, YouTube. YouTube is actually the world's second largest social network, so it's owned by Google. Hundreds of millions of videos are on it. It can be somewhat easy to post a video to it. You can share a private video with up to 50 users. Alicia, any questions about this chart?
I actually have a question about Instagram, which is not listed on here. Is that something that you recommend?
Yeah, it should be listed on here. I was just noticing it's not here. This screenshot, or this grid is from a year ago, and Instagram was really taken off in the last year. So Instagram is a very fast-growing social network. So what Instagram is it's a photo-sharing social network. So you can share photos through your smartphone, give them a really cool filter, or edit them to change the look of them, and then post to Instagram. Instagram is the fastest-growing social network among teenagers. What I would recommend it for is I would say it's a very good tool for improving your search results because it's going to be one of the top social networks. It's going to get a lot of photos out there. You can also meet really interesting people, users, through Instagram. You can have a private account on Instagram as well, but as I said with everything before, someone can take a screenshot of your photo and repost it as well.
We now have a few questions about some of these social media outlets. One person, there's a couple questions about Pinterest in particular. One is, can you remove history from Pinterest, assuming that no one has taken a screenshot? And the other one is, and that's from Hollis. And from Dora, if you could briefly explain or give an example of how Pinterest might help my professional online reputation.
Got it. What was the first question regarding Pinterest? Removing your history?
It was removing.
I don't know what she means by removing history in this case, unfortunately.
I don't either.
I'm sorry, Hollis. I don't know the answer to that question. I know that Pinterest, as all social networks, have really good support sites. So I'm assuming if you go to pinterest.com/support, there will be an FAQ there and also a place to ask questions, and you'll probably be able to find the answer pretty quickly through there. And then Dora's question was about using Pinterest for personal online reputation.
Correct.
So Pinterest is a couple thoughts on Pinterest is from a social media perspective, so Pinterest allows you to post images and videos attached to your pin boards, attached to your name, so that one of the many social networks that will appear under your name, Pinterest could be one of them. Pinterest is a little different than other social networks in that how it works, it's hard to explain technically speaking, but when you post an image to Pinterest, you'll have a link, and that link will link back to the original source from that place, from that website. So let's say that Dora is, I'm just going to say, an interior designer, and she's got, thousands of photos of homes that she's designed over the last 10 years. She can post all of those photos on her own personal website and then pin them on Pinterest as well. And what's ultimately going to happen is that as people discover her photos, they're going to repin them on their pin boards. And these photos can start to get a lot of following around them on Pinterest. And every time that photo is repinned, that photo has a link back to the original source, which in this case would be Dora's website. So all of these photos are going to have a network effect on Pinterest very quickly. So suddenly, thousands of people can be discovering these photos, and then every time they click the photo, it will link back to her website. So that's going to send a tremendous amount of traffic back to her website and ultimately raise awareness about what Dora does. In this case, it's a theoretical interior designer. So again, if you're in the visual space or creative industry, Pinterest can be a great way to share photos of the work that you do.
Great. Michelle is asking about Vine.
Yes, Vine. What about Vine? Just how it works?
What about Vine? That's the question. Perhaps what it is, because I know I don't know what it is, so some people might not.
Sure. So Vine is a social network offshoot owned by Twitter, and it is a video service owned by Twitter. Ultimately, you can post a 6-second video on Vine, and it will play on a loop. So a lot of, teenagers and young adults love to use this to create funny videos. Brands are starting to do a lot of it as well. Oreo has funny Vines using Oreo, for example. So if you're maybe more of an entertainer or more of a creative person, Vine could be really fun as well. You can also use Vine to show or to capture something in a more creative way. So maybe you've done a conference and you want to take videos throughout the day and then put them all together in a 6-second loop as well. I should note that Instagram also allows people to share short videos as well right within it. And most importantly about Instagram, which I did not mention earlier, is that Instagram is now owned by Facebook. So there's a lot of synergy between Instagram and Facebook. So when you post a photo on Instagram, you can post it directly to Instagram, and it can also publish to your Facebook profile. It can also go out to Twitter and other social networks as well.
We do have a few other questions. One person, Merle, is asking, what software do you use to update your social media all at once?
Oh, that's a great question, which leads us to our next slide right after this. I'm going to answer her question after I go right through the screenshot. So steps to getting started. So number one is setting up your profiles and keeping them consistent. Sending people somewhere for more information about you. So sending them to your LinkedIn profile where they can get your contact information, or to your personal website where they can find out more about your business. Adjust your privacy settings to your comfort level. Connect with people you know in real life first. So this is very important in that, you know, maybe I'm joining LinkedIn for the first time. When you join LinkedIn, it's going to prompt you to enter your email address, because it's then going to go into your email address book and say, oh, here are 200 people that you may know on LinkedIn, and it will send out invites for you automatically. Listening first and getting to know people on social media is very important. Somebody once told me it's like a cocktail party. You wouldn't walk into a cocktail party talking about how great you are and trying to make a hard sell to every person in the room. Instead, you would walk up to a couple people and say, hey, I'm Tracy. It's great to meet you. Tell me about yourself. The same rule applies to social media. Trying to follow a schedule to keep organized. So, Alicia, to the last question, I'm going to talk about that next. But a lot of people typically will spend maybe 15 minutes in the morning on social media, or if they have time in the afternoon, hop on there for a few minutes, schedule some posts or reply to some queries or tweets online. Staying classy, taking offline when needed. So some people can be bullies online. I've certainly encountered a few on social media. It's always a good idea to just either ignore people, respond if you must, but do so politely, and contact the person offline to discuss any sort of disagreements. Finally, meeting in real life as often as possible is really key to keeping those deep relationships through social media. So either meeting people at a conference or a party or any sort of networking group, meeting offline is important for that. But to the question that was just asked, what kind of software do I recommend for social media? Upper right-hand corner is a website called Sprout Social. So this is a premium social media dashboard. It allows you, what a social media dashboard does is it ingests all of your social profiles, so maybe your Facebook profile, your Twitter profile, your LinkedIn, your Google+, into one platform, so that you can actually schedule posts to go live throughout the day or through the week. You can look at your analytics to figure out what that I'm sharing online is doing really well online. You can also discover new users that you might not know about that you want to interact with. That's Sprout Social. TweetDeck on the left-hand side of the screen is a social network that's owned by Twitter. Twitter acquired it a couple of years ago, and it actually updates in real time. It can be rather overwhelming to somebody that's new to Twitter, in that all of these different grids are scrolling in real time with people as they're tweeting. But we use it in newsrooms here at Crane, and lots of brands will use it as well. So if you really want to understand how fast it works, I would check that social media dashboard out. Below this are a couple of websites for additional reading. Flipboard is a great tool that I recommend to executives and business people on the go. It's an app for your phone or your tablet. It ingests all of the major media outlets that you might be reading, as well as all of your social media feeds, into essentially what is a digital magazine. And so as you're reading it, you can actually find articles and tweet them out or post them to LinkedIn right within the app. So it's a really great way to share content quickly. It's called Flipboard. And finally, the website that I read every day is Mashable.com, which is the leading website on news, trends, and tutorials about all things social media related. More questions, Alicia? Actually, let me hop over. These are more books that I think could be great reading if people want to learn more about social media marketing.
Great. We do have a few more questions. Hollis is asking about if you have any thoughts on Snapchat and the new anti-Facebook social network. She's forgotten the name. That became popular about 2 months ago. It supposedly has less advertising.
Right. So that website's Ello, E-L-L-O. It was created by a group of artists in Burlington, Vermont earlier this year, and it went essentially viral in September when the LGBT community in San Francisco got upset with Facebook that they couldn't use stage names on their profiles. So a lot of transgender people would, have a different name, and Facebook wouldn't allow them to use it. So all those people left Facebook in September and decided to go to Ello, because Ello, being run by artists, had a very open policy regarding names and things like that. So then what happened was all the social media strategists in the world all said, oh, this is a new hot social network because all these people just joined it, so we should join it too. But what happened was everybody got there and there wasn't very much going on yet. So you can certainly have a profile on Ello. I think everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with it. There is allegedly no advertising on it as well. So it might become an alternative to Facebook. We just need to see how it goes. Regarding Snapchat, Snapchat is a social network that launched probably 2 years ago. How it works essentially is you can connect with another person, and then through the app you can send a message that will self-destruct within 10 to 30 seconds of that person viewing it. So a lot of teenagers will like it because they can send jokes to their friends or content to their friend and then never have to see it again. But again, remember, anyone can take a screenshot of content posted to Snapchat.
There's been a couple other questions about Pinterest and Instagram. One is, Merle, does Instagram own the rights to your images, or do you?
Social networks will own the rights to all content that you post to a social network in some way, typically. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but I would read the terms of service and do more background search on that.
We also have, there's some, Hollis is asking about Pinterest, since it has no privacy, had a page of teddy bears for a child to see and doesn't want prospective employers to see it. That was the instance on Pinterest, wanting to remove that that pin board full of teddy bears so that their prospective employers can't see it. So that was the example, hoping to remove them. Do you know if that's possible?
Oh. You could delete the board, and I think that it would be very difficult for them to find it once you've deleted it.
Great.
I would just delete it.
And then there's just a couple of other questions. One is someone asked about what happens when you have a name that is shared by others, or a common name. How do you distinguish yourself, or how do you manage it? Are there any different techniques for managing your online reputation?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a name shared by other people, right? That was the question?
Right, yes.
That's funny. That's exactly how I started using my middle name. When I was a reporter at Time Magazine in Washington, the spokesman for the RNC was named Tracy Schmidt. And so I realized that if I need to differentiate myself from Tracy Schmidt, or her search results are always going to beat out my search results, and people might be confused by which Tracy Schmidt is talking. So I just started putting my middle name on everything, like in my byline and then on all of my social profiles. And so now people know me professionally as Tracy Samantha Schmidt, and if you were to Google me, I'm the only one with my name. So I would recommend starting to use your middle name, or starting to use a middle initial in all of your profiles and all of your communication as well.
Great. And then I'm just going to put out a couple more questions that are most relevant here. Someone did ask a quick question about how to contact Google. Is that information right on their homepage?
Yeah, it should be. If you just Google remove content from Google, it should come right up.
Great. And then someone is also asking, Talonda is asking, for Facebook, do you recommend not using Messenger, the Messenger service? I was told that doing so gives Facebook and individuals access to all of your information and contacts.
Yeah, I would be careful what you're putting in Facebook Messenger. Facebook does have pretty lenient, or pretty essentially policies that are not favorable to its users in regards to ownership and privacy and things like that. So I would instead, email or do some other kind of communication if you're worried about that.
And one final question. Terry is asking about how to get People Finder services to stop broadcasting things like your age.
I don't know how to do that. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that either.
I'm sorry.
And I think that's the end of our questions.
Okay, this is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I want to say thank you again to Tracy for giving us some great information. We're lucky to have an alumna like you to help guide us through the world of online personal reputation management. And I want to let everyone know that early next week that you will receive an email from our office that will have a link to the video of this, as well as a survey. I hope you will take just a couple minutes to fill out the survey. It will help us evaluate our topics, our speakers, and the platform which we use to present these webinars. We hope that you'll join us after the new year when we will be hosting a few more of these. We're still working on our topics, so that's another reason why your survey results are so important. Thanks so much for everyone for staying with us the whole hour. It's been wonderful. Thank you again, Tracy.
Great, thank you.